Qatar, a literal chunk of sand, in the middle of nowhere, has become one of the most overpowered countries. With only 2.8 million inhabitants, which is the same as fucking Manchester, Qatar is legitimately more important than most EU countries have ever been. As a matter of fact, Manchester reminds me that the World Cup was held there in 2022, which, was a bit controversial.
Today I feel gay.
With a lot of news published on the topic of the working conditions and the way the actual builders were treated. But besides the World Cup, Qatar is a literal tank. And that's all because they have oil. Can you imagine if some dinosaurs didn't die there a few million years ago and the Qatar government would still resort to pearl hunting, which was literally their main income source for years? The oil money has given them the chance to invest billions. Yes, with a B, into real estate, such as the Shard in London and other things, most notably football. In 2011, the organisation Qatar Sports Investments bought PSG, arguably the most prestigious club in France. And do you think it stopped there? Hell no. The new owner of the club, Nasser Al-Khelaifi, went on a literal spending spree in the following years. This of course was followed by another spending spree in 2017 to buy Neymar, Mbappe, later also Messi, and pretty much every footballer who is able to kick the ball better than the average Sunday League player. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, this means that the club became an instant success and won everything, right? Well, not exactly. Actually, they pretty much bottled every single valuable trophy after the initial money dump in 2011. But now I'm getting off topic. Let's talk about the beast Qatar. The country has the fourth highest GDP in the world. It's the largest exporter of LNG, was the world's richest country for 3 years in a row from 2010 to 2012, and is generally quite a safe, innovative country, so everything must be perfect, right? Well no, the country's facing several problems, and instead of fixing them, they are straight up just trying to hide them. The most severe issue? Labour conditions. Man, I personally wouldn't have it if 1 year after the World Cup I still hadn't been paid, and the country that owes me money was just like, yeah, anyway, next question. Like, seriously? Workers built the stadiums, endured inhuman conditions, and many of them died, yet the government shrugs off responsibility while raking in billions from gas exports casually. But that's far from the end. Only about 10% of the country's population is made up of Qatari citizens. The rest, you might ask, migrant workers who are being exploited, or foreigners who are probably there to shoot epic, life-changing self-improvement TikToks on their rented Lambos. If you're a Qatari citizen, life is legitimately great for you. Free healthcare, free education, government stipends, and even free land. But if you're a foreigner who is straight up a worker, man, you in hardcore survival. Not only this, but despite Qatar claiming to have abolished the kafala system, which tied workers to their employers, many companies still withhold wages, confiscate passports, and cram workers into overcrowded labour camps. Some labourers report working 12-plus hour shifts with barely any breaks, and if they protest, they risk deportation, blacklisting, or even being thrown in jail. Like, imagine you have to work in a literal sauna for 12 hours straight, building some fucking oil billionaire's mega mansion, just for the sake of not being thrown in the jail. And bro, how could I forget? Social inequality. This is straight up nonsense at this point. Women still need male guardianship for major life decisions. Want to get married? Better have a male guardian's approval. Also, Qatar loves to talk about its sustainability and green energy initiatives, but let's be real, the country is still one of the biggest polluters per capita. They built air-conditioned stadiums in the desert for the World Cup, then claimed it was carbon neutral. Like, bro, how does any of that make sense? This, by the way, is the same country that relies entirely on desalination for water and consumes an insane amount of energy just to survive. Let's get this straight. They're talking about green energy, but their idea of sustainability is literally building air-conditioned stadiums in the middle of a desert. And don't get me started on the geography of Qatar. As I said, it is literally a chunk of sand, which means that you can't really grow anything there, let alone think about doing something related to agriculture. It's like trying to grow a cactus in the middle of Antarctica. The country's landscape is dominated by barren deserts and salt flats, with little to no access to freshwater resources. In fact, the land is so dry, you'd think it was designed to be a barren wasteland on purpose, like the set of a damn Mad Max movie. The extreme heat and lack of natural rainfall make it nearly impossible to grow crops. So what do instead? They rely heavily on imported food, which is kind of like a nation being on a permanent diet of takeout, except it's all imported from places like India, the US and Europe. In fact, around 90% of Qatar's food is imported, and yet they still face food security issues. I mean, come on, if you're sitting on all this oil money, you'd think they'd be able to figure out how to feed themselves without depending on everyone else, right? And the few farms they do have, well, those are mostly greenhouses, and even those require constant cooling and water desalination, which is of course an energy-hungry process. So while they try to grow tomatoes or cucumbers under a roof of glass, they're literally burning through energy and water, just to make it look like there's some form of agriculture happening. It's a bit like planting a single flower in a plastic cup and calling it a garden, while completely ignoring the fact that your lawn is essentially a desert. Nah, but in all honesty, this country might have its flaws. Well, quite a few of them. But it is still a tank in the economic world, and you can't really argue against it as long as we are buying oil from them. Like, bro, let's be real. No one's going to stop buying gas and oil anytime soon, because in this global economy, that liquid is legit gold, and basically the lifeblood of many nations. And let's be clear here, they're not just sitting on their billions waiting for the next oil boom. Qatar's investments in global business, from sports clubs to luxury brands and beyond, show that they are actively trying to diversify their economy beyond just oil. So, while the country might be incredibly problematic in many ways, it's also incredibly strategic and smart when it comes to securing long-term wealth and influence. Are we all going to sit around and pretend that the country's wealth isn't influencing global decisions? Nah, you just can't. And if you do, you're just delusional. As long as we're all filling up our cars and using natural gas to heat our homes, Qatar is going to keep on flexing on us no matter how many flaws are piled on top. So, while we might criticise them, Qatar's economic clout is so massive that it's impossible to ignore.